Hello everyone. In this video I wanted to talk about perfect lambda values in Otto engines. First, let's briefly talk about lambda. What does it mean? Now, lambda is the air-fuel equivalence ratio and describes how much air is present in relation to the fuel. That is important because fuel needs a certain amount of oxygen in order to combust completely. And if there is just enough oxygen, this is called a stoichiometric mixture of lambda 1. Lambda is expressed as the quotient of the actual air mass over the fuel's ideal air mass, which means that it has no dimension. If, for example, 1 kilogram of fuel requires 14.5 kilograms of air for complete combustion, and there is 13.8 kilograms of air present, then it's 13.8 over 14.5, which is approximately 0.95. So lambda is 0.95, which is a rich mixture. On the other hand, if we've got 16 kilograms of air, then it's 16 over 14.5, which is 1.1. So lambda is 1.1, which is a lean mixture. So what is an ideal lambda value? Well, the truth is, there is no definite answer to this question because there is a target conflict between good emissions on one hand and a well-performing engine on the other. Modern Otto engines use lambda 1 all the time, which is not ideal in terms of fuel consumption and performance, but I'll get to that in a moment. Modern exhaust gas treatment systems and Otto engines typically have a so-called freeway catalyst. Despite all efforts, the combustion in internal combustion engines is incomplete, which means that some parts of the fuel won't combust, and if lambda is 1, then there is also oxygen present in the exhaust because it wasn't used in the combustion. A freeway catalyst is called a freeway catalyst because it removes three components, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons and nitrogen oxides, from the exhaust. It uses two carbon monoxide molecules and one oxygen molecule to form two carbon dioxide molecules. It uses X times the number of carbon atoms plus Y times the number of hydrogen atoms divided by 4 present in the hydrocarbon molecules to form X carbon dioxide molecules and Y halves water molecules, and it reduces 2 nitrogen oxide molecules with 2 carbon monoxide molecules to form 1 D-nitrogen molecule, which is regular nitrogen in the air surrounding you, and 2 carbon dioxide molecules. Now, if there was too much oxygen, the reduction of the nitrogen oxide would start working. On the other hand, an insufficient amount of oxygen would make the oxidization of the carbon monoxide and the hydrocarbons stop working. So a freeway catalyst requires lambda 1 in order to function properly. Modern exhaust gas legislation has become so strict that lambda 1 must be maintained under all circumstances. It can't be increased or decreased ever so slightly because that would make a car fail emissions testing. Now at this point I quickly have to mention that in the past there were some Otto engines that used lean burn and a lean anode extract device to combat nitrogen oxide emissions. This does work, but also proved way too complicated and expensive for passenger cars, so car manufacturers have largely abandoned this concept in favor of a more traditional homogeneous burn principle and lambda 1. If you like, I can also make a separate video on this particular topic. So now we know why lambda is 1 all the time, but why would we not want this? And it becomes pretty apparent if we have a look at the lambda window of this 2-valve engine that does not have a freeway catalyst converter. Otto engines produce their highest performance at around lambda 0.9, but this value can be lower or higher depending upon engine speed and engine load. Otto engines have their highest performance at lambda 0.9 because some parts of the fuel can't combust due to a lack of oxygen, which means that the remaining fuel that can't combust fully vaporizes, which removes heat energy from the combustion chamber, so the combustion chamber is cooled down, and thus this decreases the volume of the cylinder charge, which is the mixture of the air and fuel. So at lambda 0.9, the engine can burn more fuel because the air and the fuel require less volume and thus less displacement because they are cooler due to the excess fuel that doesn't combust, but removes heat energy from the combustion chamber. In addition to that, this cooling effect also reduces the likelihood of engine knocking, so it can be used in order to prevent engine failure. In the history of internal combustion engines, the technique of using mixture enrichment, so lambda less than 1, has been used for a long time as the full throttle mode in auto engines. And there are even engines that don't reach their rated power figure without it. A famous example is the Mercedes-Benz 140 series M120 12-cylinder engine that was rated 300 kilowatts but could only reach 290 kilowatts without mixture enrichment. So what happens if we use a slightly lean mixture that actually improves the engine efficiency? Typically at lambda 1.1, the engine is most efficient. All of this is why older internal combustion engines that don't have freeway catalysts usually have a lean mixture under low and medium load and a rich mixture under full throttle conditions. This is especially noticeable in engines with, for their age, very sophisticated engine control systems such as BMW M30 engines with Bosch Motronic ECUs. Now, we actually have to keep in mind that in the 1970s and 1980s, the technology had not yet reached a point where lambda could be controlled very precisely. This is even true for cars with three-way catalysts. However, even with a carburetor, lambda can be set to be approximately 0.9 under full throttle and approximately 1.1 under medium load conditions. Something I should mention is that contrary to popular belief, a slightly lean mixture is not harmful for the engine under low load conditions. But what actually happens to the exhaust throughout the whole lambda window? As I've mentioned earlier, there are typically 3 components in the Otto engine exhaust that need to be converted into less harmful substances. We can see that at lambda 0.9 there are not so many nitrogen oxides but both high carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon emissions. At lambda 1.1, hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide emissions are low, but the nitrogen oxide emissions are very high. So in order for all of these pollutants to be removed from the exhaust, a three-way catalyst is needed. And true, other methods are possible, but as I've said, both too complicated and too expensive, so modern engines are tied to lambda 1.0 and can't use the benefits of slightly leaner or slightly richer mixtures. I personally think that lambda 1.0 is just fine. Modern series production Otto engines for passenger cars can reach specific power outputs of around 100 kilowatts per cubic decimeter even with lambda 1. They don't need to enrich their mixture. On the other hand, the fuel savings with lambda 1.1 are measurable but negligible nonetheless, simply because the exhaust gas treatment systems required for such lambda values would be very expensive. So despite the fact that modern car engines can't use ideal lambda values, it does not really matter in the end. But that's it for this video. I hope that you've learned something interesting today. Feel free to leave comments and suggestions down below, and I will see you in the next one.